Hello and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. And my name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I want to build out the logic to calculate our wage breakdowns here. So in the last video, to get you caught up, what we did was we created an event from this pay type here. And what that event does is it checks to see if this is hourly or salary. And then, depending on the selection, it then disables a field, in this case annual, and steers the user or the inputter to actually use the right field. So we disabled this input and then we also disabled this. And then when we go to salary, same thing. The hourly is disabled, the buzz disabled, and they are essentially steered towards getting the annual pay so they can calculate it. So now what I'd like to do is actually do some of this calculation. We're going to start by annual because annual with salaried is just whatever, 5,600. And if it's 40 hours per week, then obviously 2080, 26, and 12. Now, the trick comes into the hourly, because the hourly, you can take it that way, but then we also have to worry about this FTE thing. And the FTE, if we have, 0.5 FTE, that's going to change our calculations from hourly over. We're just assuming that every week is a 40-hour work week, but that also may not be the case. I mean, some work weeks in some organizations are 38, some are 36 even. Some are even 32, I've seen. So that's going to change a little bit here, but I'm also going to put in as somewhat of an instruction piece right here, kind of telling how to run this thing and the assumptions based on a 40-hour work week, on and on. So let's jump in. Let's do this annual calculation here real quick. So let's go over to our code. And let's first look at these buttons. So the annual button, we want to essentially trigger something. And what we can do, just like we did with our premiums, we can send that to a function that is also the same function as the hourly. And we can do that by assigning this event argument. Now, this can be anything, but since it is an event, we just call it an event. And then that event can check the target ID of which button was pushed. And then from there, we can build out something, our logic. So let's come over here to our calc functions, and that function that we are wanting to call is called calc wage. And what we want this calc wage to do is listen and grab the target ID, grab the target ID essentially, and let's store it in a variable. So we can call that wage calc button clicked. Sure, that'll work. And this is going to, first, this has to receive the event. This is going to grab that event, and we need to understand the target and get the ID. So now that'll get the ID of whatever button was clicked. And we can see this by simply creating a temporary alert to show it. So let's save this and then go back to our form, and I'll show you how this works. So let's refresh. Okay, so coming down here, we want to just hit calc, and you'll see it produces the ID of that button. Same thing with hourly, produces the ID of the button. So now we can use this to run some logic. So let's come back over here to our code and let's start writing that logic. Let's get rid of this. We don't need that anymore. But before we run logic, we are going to need to grab some of our variables. We're going to need a variable of our annual, hourly, biweekly, monthly. Yep, we're going to need all of that. So let me write that. Let me create that here real quick. Okay, there we go. Now you'll notice that I'm not getting the value of these. I'm simply just setting the focus in that variable. And then when we call this variable, we will have to actually grab that value. So I'll show you what I mean here. So let's create our if statement. If wage calc button click equals, now the first one we want to do is let's have it be the rec wage annual. Now when you're writing if statements can get incredibly complicated depending on how many different things you're checking and how many situations that can arise, because an if statement, you're trying to capture every single situation and then provide a response for it. So we want to see if the annual button was clicked, and then we also want to we also want to see if the value of this rec annual pay field is strictly equal to nothing. And if it is, we want to do something. And what we want to do is actually give some sort of notification that, hey, you know what, you gotta kind of enter an amount into this. And we can do this by the same method that we did previously. We can highlight that backfield yellow and give a little notification. And if you come up here, what I did was right underneath our compensation title, that span going across, we can actually create a P class. And this P class is a paragraph, and I gave that ID a comp alert. So we can use this comp alert to essentially provide a notification. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's first create a variable here, and you're seeing that I'm using a lot of variables over and over. So when we think of our acronym DRY, don't repeat yourself, then what we're going to need to do, and probably right after this would be a good time to do it, I'm going to not have to, but I'm going to go through and pull out all the variables that I'm using over and over and put them in a global variable. And then also take a look at how I can kind of condense and consolidate some of this. But for now, we'll just keep going. So that was comp alert. Now, we're going to need to set the inner text because it's a P. So we can simply just type inner text, and we want this inner text to say, please enter the expected annual pay amounts, like so. But this actually needs to come down here. Here, we just need to simply, because this is going to change, we need to set this to first grab the focus of that comp alert. Okay, there we go. And now what we're also going to need to do is set that annual pay to yellow. dot style dot background color. It's going to be this one. And that is going to be equal to yellow. So there you go. So now we can actually run this and see what we got. Let's give it a spin. Okay, we refreshed it. So let's go. Interesting. So typically when there's no functionality here, what that means is that we made a typing error here, a typo somewhere. And we did. Looks like missing the line right there. No spelling, no spelling. Okay, so that should take care of it. I'm notorious for getting forgetting semicolons or periods and nope, still not. Let's go see what we got here. Let's go see. What did I call that doesn't exist? Ah, there we go. Okay, so let's go back here, refresh our tab. That looks like that should have taken care of everything. Yep, there it is. Okay, so we're going to want to press this calc button, and what should happen is this should just illuminate yellow, and it should provide us that text up there. So let's see. Yep, please enter the expected pay amount, and there's the yellow. Now, what I would like to do is have this go away because you'll notice that it's just going to stay there until we do something with it. And, that's not incredibly helpful. And how we can do this is we can set what's called a timeout. And the way JavaScript and Google Apps Script for that matter thinks about time, actually a lot of coding languages thinks about time, is it doesn't think about it in hours, minutes, days, years, whatever, unless we tell it to. Its base unit of time is the millisecond. So say we want to have this, I'm going to have this, it's only a single line. I'm going to have it close after 3 seconds. I can't just use 3. I have to convert that 3 to milliseconds, which would be 3,000. So let's go back here to our code and set that timeout. And where we're going to want this timeout to be is right here in the same if statement, but we want it to be right here. And how we create this timeout to where it'll close after our 3 seconds is we simply type in set time out. Now this is going to be used to delay a function call. So it's going to need a function, and we're going to use our arrow notation here just because it's a little cleaner and easier. Then we'll need a semicolon right there. And now what we're going to want to do is inside these curly brackets, the block, we got to give it the instructions. And what we want is the comp alert inner text to be set to equal nothing. And then we also want the rec. Just grab this whole line here. Actually, you don't have to have me watch me tie it over or type it over. We want that to be set to nothing. Now we have to give it a time. So the time goes after the instruction block, and we wanted 3 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a little note here. Set instructions to run after a given time. Okay, good. So now when we save this and then go back to our form here, okay, we refreshed. Nothing. So let's go back and see what I did here. See what I forgot. Oh, there it is. Not dot. Wow, I am just all sorts of messing up on these commas and periods. Give that another space. Okay, so now we'll save this. And that should take it. It's not a dot, it's a comma because you're separating instructions, not continuing them on. It's the best way to think about it. Okay, so now we'll refresh this and give it a go. There we go. Yep, that did it. So now when we hit the calculation button, it'll do everything, but then after 3 seconds, it will close itself down and it'll run that instruction block to clear it. So good. So now we have that. So now what we need to do is once we do this, we need to write another if statement to see, okay, if it's not empty, then we got to run some stuff. We got to do our calculations. So to do that, we got to come over and find our if, and let's go else if, and we can just grab this. Put it in here. So if that button is the wage annual button and the wage annual button is not equal to empty, then we want to run something else. Now we can get into getting the annual pay dot value. And, let's just store this in another variable for now. Let's call it wage and. And wage and is going to equal to rec annual pay value. So it's going to be equal to the value of whatever was inputted in that box. And it's going to be able to grab this value because this isn't going to run until it finds out that that box is not empty. So what we can actually do now is start setting some values. So this is based on a 40-hour week, of course. That's our assumption. So let rec hourly, that is the field that we have stored up here. And we want the value of that to be equal to wage and simply divided by 2080. And we want to do a 2 fixed to that. Give it 2 decimal places. And we don't need to make this a variable. I'm thinking there, we just need to run it. And then we need to do the biweekly. And that value is going to equal wage and divided by 26. And again, different companies have different measurements of a full work week. But to keep it simple and not chasing down all the rabbit holes of what if and specializing it for each, we're just keeping it at a typical 40-hour, 52-week year, 2080, 200 or 2080 hour year time frame. And if the company was different, it's you can easily just change these calculations here, or even do it dynamically with your spreadsheet. Grab it and bring it back. But if you need help with that, please just don't hesitate to reach out if you're building one of these. I'll be more than happy to consult with you. The value of this is going to equal wage and this is going to be monthly, simply 12.2 fixed. Now we don't want to clear this because this is our number. All right, this here is our number. But we will want to clear this Well, first let's make sure this works. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me make sure I got all the dots this time so it's not messing up. Okay, there we go. Come over here. Let's refresh it. Okay, so we'll get the instruction. Then what we'll do is let's just type 56,000, calculate, and there we go. So now the one thing that we're going to have to do is clear this when something else is pushed. So we're going to need to clear this when this button is pushed, first thing, and then clear the hourly, biweekly, and monthly when this button is pushed. We don't want to clear that value. And then we would need to clear everything because this was salaried. If we changed it to hourly, it clears. So good. And the reason that clears is coming back over here when we are initially registering this this wage helper. Its default is automatically clearing it. And what I think I'm actually going to do is probably create I'm probably going to create what's called a clear function. So let me just go ahead and put a placeholder there right now. Let's do function clear wage fields. That'll be a little reminder for me to add in some of this. Once I move these variables up to a global, I can just simply put everything that we need to clear. Like you'll see all this right here. I can put everything that we need to clear in a single function and then just call that one function over and over when I need it to clear. So we'll take care of that. So we have a working calculator from annual. The one thing that we do need to do is, we need to clear that. So let's go ahead and grab this and add this in here. So what we'll do is we will grab all this for now. I'm just going to grab all this. And again, we're using these again. So after we get this video, you don't need to see me put this up in a global variable and hunt through variables. But so this is going to grab our rec pay type, our annual pay type, our hourly, biweekly, monthly, annual button, and then it's going to set everything to true. So if we run this right here, simply clear wage fields. So if we were to run this right here, what's going to happen is it's going to do this before. Oh, see, we can't do that because if we did this here, thinking about where this is, see what I did was I created a wage function. I clear the wage fields, or clear wage fields is the function name. And then I came down and grabbed the first thing that this wage type helper does. So that is this pay type salary. So the second that you do something here, it clears everything. See, it clears everything. And if you select something other than hourly and salary, it clears it all. And that's kind of what we're going to need to do. And we don't want to do it when this button is pushed. Because if this button is pushed and we clear everything, then we're going to clear that as well, and we need the value of that. So we don't want to keep clearing it out and give the poor user a never-ending cycle of having to enter this text and match this button, which will only clear it. So I tell you what, I'm going to end this video here, and what I'm going to do is I want to clean all of this up because, as you can see, this is starting to get cluttered, and it's getting difficult to find code or read it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and put them up into a global variable so I can pull them all throughout this, and also um, work with this clear wage field. And then, and then we'll be able to really work on the clearing. And then the next video, we will work on our hourly if statement with the value of the FTE built in to those calculations. So it's going to be in, if FTE is 1, then run it this way. If FTE is 0.25, then run it this way. 0.5, run it that way. So I hope this was an informative video, and until next time, please take care.